for my, one second. Yeah, so I was saying that Power Query is not just what I've shown you. The bulk of work that you will do on Power Query is to sit down with a piece of paper and create the logic and the flow. Otherwise, it's very simple. It is not like a programming language where you have to write code and you have to debug it. As long as you know what commands you want to select and what order you want to select them in, your job is done. But you don't know what you have to do. That's the problem. You know this is the input and this is the expected output. But to take it from the input to the output, there might be 17 steps and there might be 5 different ways of doing it. And that is where the complexity comes in, because you're not sure what the approach is. There isn't one perfect answer for any problem. Like the example that we're going to do right now, I can think of 5 different ways to come up with a solution, right? So that is what makes it exciting. The more you practice, the more you experiment, that is how you will get better than other people. Does set as total option of waterfall chart? Got it. Okay, no problem. All right, so let's look at a slightly difficult problem now. This is something I do for all the big fours. I mean, 3 of the big fours at least. And here's my problem, everyone. We have data for 4 regions. So we have north, east, south, and west. And we have the actual and target for 5 months. So we have actual and target for January. We have actual and target for February. And the same for March and April and May. Here is my question. Can you make a pivot table from this data set? 4 regions, 5 months, actual and target. Can you make a pivot table from this data set? No, we cannot. We cannot, because a pivot table requires, remember, I told you the column has to be a unique column. Here, the columns are not unique. I can't have multiple columns with different months in it. The data set, Dipanjan, should have been like this. It should be a region, should be the first column. The second one should be the type. The third one should be the month. And the last one should be the value. This is how the data set should happen. This is how a proper table is constructed. This means that I need to have north, which is coming 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times for 5 different months. Then what is the type? It is actual. Then I copy the same thing once again, because this one will now become the target. And then I'll have all the months. So I'll say this is Jan, and this is Feb, and this is March, and this is April, and this is May. Then I'll have to copy this one more time like this. And then all these numbers that you see, I'm just going to quickly do a transpose. This is how the data should be. This means there should be 10 records for north, followed by 10 records for east, 10 for west, and 10 for south. So my data set should not be the way I've shown it to you right now in a scorecard, cross-tabular format. Because this data is already in a pivot format. How can I make a pivot from this? See, this is my row, and this is my column, and these are the values inside. I hope you're all able to see it. See, this is my, let me just close my tool and open it again. There seems to be some problem with my annotation tool. 1 second. And it's working now. Excellent. So I would say that if I made a pivot table, this is my column. Then this entire thing is, I'm sorry, this is my row, this is my column, and all of these are the values. This is already a pivot table. How will you convert a pivot table again into a pivot table? If you click on the button pivot table, it will not stop you, but the result will be completely meaningless. Your final result is going to look like this. Is this how a data set should be? Absolutely not. There is no column called month. So how will I filter the month that I want? There is no column called the value. So how do I see the sum of the value, right? If there is one column called value, I can put it in values so that I can see the aggregation, sum, average, count, whatever I want to do. Yes. So what we have to do is we have to do an unpivoting, right? But with a little bit more effort than a simple unpivoting. So let me remove this. Now that we've seen the problem, it's already a table. So it's called table one. I'll go to data and click on from table oblique range. You get the data set like this. Now, the very first problem that we have is that actual target, all these headings that you see should not actually be the heading. They should be a part of the data. That means I want to do the reverse of what we did earlier. Earlier, we said the first row should become the headers when we selected the customer ID and the name. This time, I want to select the opposite, which is I want to make the headers as the first row. So you notice that now the headers have shifted and they have become a part of the data like this. Why? Because I want to do some data transformation on the header. How can I make some transformation if it is a part of the header? Now I want to transform my data, which is transpose. Okay. So if you notice, the data is looking a lot better now. Now we have a column that has the month and actual target in it, but this has to be split. Remember, because the month should be in one column and the type should be in a different column. Then north, east, west, south should not be in different columns. They should be one below the other. What is the first thing? The first thing is I will make first row as header so that it becomes region north, east, west, and south. But then this has to be split, remember? So we can use add column and then column from examples. What example do we want to give? We want to say I want to separate the word called actual. So it separates all these words. And I will do the same thing once again. I will select and I will say column from examples. And in this one, I just want Jan 2020. So it separates all the dates for me. Now we don't need the original, so we can remove this. I can put my month. Let's just call this the month. And let's call this their type. Now the month can be shifted to the beginning. The type can be shifted after this. But if you notice, this is still a pivot table. It is much better than earlier, but this is still a pivot. Do you see this? This is the row, this is the column, and these are the values. So we want to unpivot the data, which means we don't want to show north, east, west, south as different columns. There should be one column with all the columns in it and another column with all the values in it. So I select north, east, south, and west, right click, and then unpivot the columns. And in one click, you notice that all the four columns have been reduced into a single column and all the values have been reduced into a single column like this. We can call this the region. This becomes the sales, and that's it. This is exactly how we wanted the data. Now I can click on close and load. The data is sent back to Excel. And now from this, if you want to make a pivot, now it is possible. When you click on insert pivot table, I'll put it on the same worksheet, let's say right next to this. Do you see this? Now in my pivot, we have month type, region, and sales. So if I want to find out the sales versus target, I can just put month in rows, type in column, and then sales in value. And this wouldn't have been possible earlier. So now I can see which one of these met the target, which one did not meet the target. Right? I mean, it's actually adding both of them. That's okay. I'll hide the grand total so that there's no confusion. We turn the grand total off. Let's just look at this. Right? Any questions on this, anyone? So if you recap the steps, we first made the header as the first row. We transposed the data. Then we did a column by example to split the type and the month, which were merged together. And obviously they were merged because in our original data set, they had been merged like this. So somehow you have to split it into two different columns, right? So this is how unpivoting works. This was my data set. I selected 4 columns, north, east, west, and south, right click and unpivot, right? Once you do the unpivoting, then the result will look like this. The funniest thing, if any of you have worked on Tableau, Tableau has a function called pivot. And it's the strangest thing because what pivot actually does is it creates an unpivot. But I don't know for what reason they've called it a pivot. It's just so confusing. It's so irritating. But that's just how it is, right? So when you have a data set and you want to clean it on Tableau, you can do that. It's not as powerful and robust as it is on Power Query, just a simple unpivoting. But it's very irritating that they have chosen to call it pivoting because pivot means you're creating a pivot. It doesn't mean that you're unpivoting. Right? So Shivam, I hope that's okay. Any other questions, anyone? And obviously you could have seen that all these steps are being saved, which means that tomorrow if I have a similar data set, I don't have to do anything else. I can just click on this entire query and the entire thing will get refreshed. For example, if I go back to my data set and I add, let's say one more month. So I'm in front of you, I'm adding June and July. So let's say this is June. And this is the June target. The numbers don't matter. I just put the same number. How do we refresh it? We can just say right click and refresh. And if you notice at the bottom, June has automatically got added. How cool is that? How will this get refreshed? Same thing, right click and refresh. Another pivot table gets refreshed as well. There are two independent refreshes. One is for the query, one is for the pivot table. Right? Okay, we'll do one last example, then we'll move over to VBA. So let's look at this. Now, what we have here is a simple data set that has okay. So we have a data set that has the project name, the segment, the analysts who are working on that project, and the total earning from that project. So this is the billable, what the client is billing to the end client, right? So what the vendor is billing to the end client. So this is what happens, when let's say at EY, a team is working, let's say there's a partner and that partner has different teams who are working on concurrent projects. But sometimes resources are shared, which means that if you look at Alan Barnes is working on 3 different projects at the same time. Now, how much are they billing the client? So if EY is working for 5 different companies, these are the billable amounts. But at the end of the day, you want to do a resource allocation, a resource planning, a cost overview. So when you want to know that if Alan is being paid 12 lakhs a year, how much is he earning for me? Now, Alan is working on 3 projects. Assuming that every analyst's contribution is equal, then Alan is contributing how much? 30,000 because there are 3 people. He's contributing 30,000 here as well because this will be divided by 2. And then in this one, it will be 1, 2, 3. So let's say about 1, 2. So about 17,000, right? Not 17, 27,000. So if I look at it, I would say that Alan is earning about 87,000 as an individual. What is my question? I want to find out who are my top 2 analysts. Tell me, how would you do this? split the names and the earnings in Power Query. Earnings by each of them. Okay. All right. So we want to split the name. How do you split the name? Of course, you want to split the name. How do you want to do it? Okay. Let's send the data to Power Query. Again, I'm going to show you two very different ways of doing this problem, and you will see that's where the complexity is. Flash fill, no. Ayushi, Flash fill will column by column from examples will not work because I don't know how many names are there in every project. If it were the same number of names, then I could have done it. So we don't want to use column from examples, people, because how do I know how many names are there in each one of them? Also, I don't want to split it into a column. I want to split it into different rows. Watch carefully. Okay, everybody, just watch this very carefully. I have my team analyst. The first thing I want to do is I want to divide this number by the number of analysts. Before I do anything else, 90,000 is not the correct number. 90,000 is for all the three people, right? So it has to be divided by the number of analysts. Now, how do I know how many analysts I have? I can use add column from examples. And I want to find out how many comma is there in every single record. So the first one has 2 comma, the second one has 1. And if you notice, it is smartly telling me the number of commas is 2, 1, 1, 2, 1, 0. If there are 2 commas, that means there are 3 analysts. If there is 1 comma, that means there are 2 analysts. Make sense? I will press OK. So now we know that these are the number of commas. But what do I do with it? I want to find the length of these commas. So we will create a new column, add column, custom column. And in this, I want to find the length. Now the length in Excel is len, but here it will be text dot length. Also remember, like a programming language, on Power Query, you have something called IntelliSense. IntelliSense is a concept in programming, which means that whenever you start typing a particular code or an object or a method, it starts to complete it automatically. So it's a completion aid, right? For example, because there are so many methods and functions in Power Query, if you notice the moment I write TE, it gives me a list of all the different functions that start with T. This is sort of what you get on Excel as well, but here it is much more powerful, okay? So when I write TEXT, I want to select text.length, and I want to find the length of which column? I want to find the length of the comma, which is my kept characters column, like this. Now, obviously, what will this do? It will simply tell me that the length is 211210. But remember, this is not the correct answer. My correct answer is this result plus 1. So if I go back to the gear icon and I update the formula and I say plus 1 at the end, now this number will be updated by 1, which is great. That's exactly what I wanted. Now I need to divide earning by the number of analysts. So I can add column, custom column, and here we say the earning per analyst is how much? My earning per analyst is the total earning divided by the custom, which is the number of analysts. And that will give me the earning per analyst like this. Now we don't need this, and this. So I can remove all these columns because this is exactly what we wanted. This is the only thing we wanted. So we are getting there. We have somehow managed to find the earning per analyst dependent on the number of analysts who are there. Now I want to split it, but I don't want to split it into columns. Remember, we want to split it into rows. Now Excel doesn't have that option, but Power Query does. So we click on Home, Split Column, and by delimiter. Now you will say, but isn't this the same thing? If we split it by a comma, obviously, what will Power Query do? It will split it into different columns, but we don't want to do that. I want to go to advanced and I want to split it into rows. Very powerful feature. Excel doesn't have this. And if you notice, it will split it into different rows like this. And obviously that number has got duplicated. So you notice the 30,000 is coming 3 times, 20 is coming 2 times, and so on and so forth. There is an extra space here, which I don't like. So I want to format it. So in transform, we can say format and we want to trim it like you do on Excel. So you have trimmed the data as well. But we are not there yet. I need to find who are my top 2 analysts. which means that first I have to sum up the total earning of every analyst, because one analyst could have worked on multiple projects. So we click on group by, and in group by, I say I want to select the team analyst column. What do I want to create? I want to create the earning per analyst, and this is the total earning per analyst, not on individual projects. I want to sum up the earning per analyst. So what will happen? It will now tell me that the total earning of every analyst is these numbers. We just want to see the top two, so I can go to home. Sorry, I can go to, I'm sorry, I can go to home, select keep rows, because we only want to select the top two rows. So I select the top two rows. And you know what is the result we get? We get who are my top two analysts. Now, when I close and load this data, this time I will load it not to a new sheet, but to the same sheet. So I click on close and load to. And I want to load it on the same worksheet. So I'm loading it on the same worksheet in F1. And very nicely, this is your original data. This is the result that we wanted. But let's see what will happen if some data changes. For example, right now, Aaron and Adam are number 1 and number 2. Let's say there was another project called Project 07. Project 07, which is in the consumer segment. And who all are working on it? There is Alan, who's working on it, along with Alan Barnes, right? And this project was, one second, let's say 20 and 40, 60. So we need a number. So let's say this is 3 lakhs, okay? How do I find the new number 2 analyst? I can right click and say refresh, and you notice it will tell me that it did not change. Give me a second. Alan Haynes is 20 and 27, 47, 47 and 1.5. Should work. If we try changing the number and making it a little bigger. Oh no, I made a mistake. I'm so sorry. One small, not a mistake, but I left out one step. Yeah, good. So I'm happy that I did the second part of the example. See, the problem is, what did we said? We set the first 2 rows, but it doesn't make sense to select the first 2 rows because we don't want to select the first 2 names, right? We first want to sort the data, largest to smallest, and then we want to select the first 2, right? So sorry about that. I forgot that one tiny step. Now we want to select the top 2. This means that first the data will be sorted, and from the sorted data, it will tell me who the top 2 are. So again, if you notice, this time, Alans are going to become the top 2. But if I remove this last project and I refresh, now you notice it will tell me that only looking at the last 6 projects, these are the top. Before you ask your questions, I want to show you how we could have got this answer in a very, very different way. I will leave it up to you to decide which one you want to do. And like I said, there are umpteen ways of getting the answer. Please watch. This is my original data. This time I want to follow a very, very different approach. Watch carefully. The first thing I'll do is, I won't find the number of analysts and then do the earning and all of that. Very simple. I have my number of analysts. I will go to home, split column, and then I will split it into multiple rows right in the beginning. So I won't do it later. I will do it right in the beginning. And then we also trim our data. So we will format and trim. Now, do you see the problem? The problem is that the earning is not correct because the same amount has been copied. I'm sorry, this is not my split by my space. It should be a split by my comma. That's what happens when you work in a hurry. Oh, Excel is crashing on me. Okay, that's not good. 926 centimeters, clearly not right. And I hope it works. One second, everyone. I'll just do that once again. So we want to split it by a delimiter. The delimiter, remember, is not a space, it's a comma. And we want to split it into rows. This is great, works perfectly. We want to format the data. We want to trim it. That works great as well. Now here's the problem. The numbers are not correct because the same number has been replicated 2 more times. But that's not correct, right? How do you fix this? Watch very, very carefully. I will go to my query. This is table 1, 2. I will duplicate the query. Right click and duplicate. In the second query, I want to find the number of analysts. Now, earlier we found the number of analysts by looking at the comma and then counting the length, finding the length. Now we can't do that because the commas have gone away. So what do? Very simple. I will say, I have my project name here. So please watch. I will group it by project name. I want to call the new column as number of analysts. And what do I want to do? I want to count the rows. So what will it do? It will tell me how many analysts are working on every project. So do you see how different this approach is? In the previous example, I showed you how you can separate the comma using column frame examples, find the length, 2 or plus 1. This time I said, let's create a duplicate query and group the projects, and this way I'll get to know the number of analysts. But the problem is, how do I get that number in this particular query? Now I'll have to do a merge. So I go to home, I will click on merge query. Because I want to pull that number here, so I will select the duplicate query. And I will say, okay, you know what? I'm interested to find out the number of analysts. So I select project name and project name so that the entire table has been brought. Then we can expand it. We can select the number of analysts. Now you simply have to divide. Now we say add column, custom column, and we want to divide. This is the earning per analyst. And we want to divide this by earning divided by the number of analysts. And we get the same result as earlier. And now we can remove both of them. And just to complete the example, once we have done this, now we want to group. So transform group by, I want to group which column, my analyst name. I want to call the new column total earning per analyst. This will be the sum of my earning per analyst. And you get the same result as earlier. Now you can sort it descending. You can click on keep rows, and you can say I want to keep the first 2 rows. So exactly the same output as earlier. So if you notice here and here, exactly the same output, but you see how different the process was. The first one used column frame examples, finding a length. This one used a duplicate query, then the grouping, then a merge, and then the final answer. Right? Now you can ask your questions. This is also the last topic on Power Query. We'll move over to VBA after this. So any closing questions that you have related to Power Query, please ask it right now. Because after this, we'll move to a completely different area. Really, no questions? See, post lunch on a Sunday is, what we call, anyway, it doesn't matter what we call it, but it's not the best session I know, but you have to keep your mind attentive because this is very important. It will not be, see, it's Rashi, it's not about remembering. I hate that word. Excel, to an extent, is about remembering. You have to remember the function and certain examples and stuff like that. Power Query is pure logic. It's just about, like I said, taking a sheet of paper, writing down what is the process you want, and then when you know what process you want, then you write it. Sequentially, it's sequential. So it runs it one by one. So it's a line by line operation. So I'll tell you what I do when it comes to working on complex projects. So rather than just telling you, no, you have to work hard, let me show you what I do. This can help you as well. I don't know if you know this website called lucidchart.com, but I work on very, very large projects, okay? So these are multi-crore projects. I mean, these are projects where a single record, a mistake or mapping something can Like this project I'm working on right now for Ministry of Power, it's under a strict NDA, so I can't show it to you. But the basic idea is that the Ministry of Power is losing multiple crores every week because they have 2,000, 3,000 PDFs that come every week, and they don't have the capability of doing it. And I've just done that project on Power Query, right? So, in fact, you know what? Hold on. I can't show you the actual solution, but I can at least show you how I've shared it with the client. That might give you an idea. Wait, I just sent it yesterday. 1 second. 26th June. See, I sent it yesterday. Not yesterday, but the day before. 28, no? 2 days back. So see, this is what I did. He said, so this data is being sent to the Ministry of Power, and he said, you send me a video and also send me the steps that you're using. So this is what I did. I said, you first send the data to Power Query. This is the PDF, which is in a folder. You select the folder. Then all the PDFs are there. Then you have to, the process is a little different. You have to click on this combine button, select the table you want, select all the table, deselect all the null values, duplicate the query. In the duplicated query, you remove all the other steps because you want to now select table number 2. Then you want to deselect the null values, remove the other columns, select the serial number we want because they just want to track specific serial numbers, right? To see the disbursement ratio. Once that is done, then I said you add a column because to calculate the bill due date, you want to do T plus 30, what they call time plus 30 days. Then you find the difference between the RTGS date and the bill date, which will be your rebate days. Then you add 1 to it. Then you remove the additional columns. Then you click on merge query. Then you merge it with the rebate table that the government has given. So basically what happens is that if a vendor to Ministry of Power makes a payment within 15 days, he gets a 2% discount or whatever, 1.5% discount. The more you delay the payment, the lesser the discount that you get. Basically, they're motivating you to give the payments again. All these amounts are in crores. So if you notice, I don't know if the amounts are there or not. Anyway, it might not be visible here, but these are all in crores that we're talking about. So I did the merge query. I got the table. I selected the column that I wanted. Then I found the rebate percentage into the total amount. So do you see how what I've shown you in the last 2 hours is exactly what we do when I'm working on a client project? It's not different. The same steps, the same logic. The time that I took was to figure out how to do it, to figure out the process. Clicking on the buttons and writing these formulas is not difficult. If you notice, none of these formulas are difficult. It's just +1, minus, plus. These are simple operators, right? The challenge will never be about learning the right function. Learning the right function, learning the function is easy. You can go online, you can just look at the documentation and you'll find it. How to use it, when to use it, which one to use is where the challenge comes. That's what differentiates what we call the boys from the men, right? And this is why I wanted to show it to you, to explain this is how these projects are created. Okay. So I hope that helps all of you. See, Power Query is going to be difficult. Let's not make it a mistake about it. The reason is because in Power Query, you have to be systematic. In Excel, what happens? We always have a last resort. If nothing works, no formula works, we say, hell with it. We have to give the file to our manager. Let me do it manually. Today's work, at least I'll complete. I'll worry about next month when I reach that bridge. In Power Query, the problem is you can't manually do anything. I can't manually select something, change, like I can't double click and I can change a value. I can't do anything like that. Any transformation that I'm performing has to be done using the command bar, which means that you really need to know what you need to press on and when you need to press on it. That is the same challenge that somebody in SQL also has. So when you're working on SQL and you have to extract data from a big database, a lot of people say, what is the big deal? You have a database, you just have to pull the data. But see, pulling data is not that simple because how the data is stored might be very different to how the user wants it, right? And that is the reason you have to write these complex queries on SQL. For those of you who have never worked on SQL earlier, I'll also show you Lucid chart. So SQL advanced query. I mean, this is just a simple one, but do you get the idea? What are we doing right now? I'm saying that I'm selecting tail num, which is our source. And then from that particular source, I'm first converting the delay into an average. That means the average is not mentioned in the data, but I'm doing the average inside the query itself. And then I'm doing a group by. Remember, we also did the group by. It is exactly the same thing. You're grouping the data. Ordering by is also we did. Remember, we sorted the data in a descending order. And then I'm limiting 10, which is what? I selected the top 2, so they are selecting the top 10. So do you see how similar Power Query is to SQL? See, at the end of the day, it's a query language. The idea is it is used not for modeling. It is used to prepare your data so that it can be sent to a model or to Power BI for further visualization or analysis, right? And that is exactly what you will learn. If you ask me, I think everybody should know at least a little bit of SQL. You will never need to work on it. I, in my life, have never written a query on SQL, nor will I need to. But I know enough of it that if I'm working in a team which has other people, I have, let's say I'm working on a project and there is a consultant from BCG who's working on SQL. How will we correspond with each other? If I don't even understand what he's telling me, it makes no sense, right? That is why I always urge you, just go to DataCamp, Udemy, wherever you want to go to, just do a basic course. You don't even need to practice it. That level of familiarity is a must, where you just know what is select, what is when, what is from, what is group by. So if somebody says SQL, you should not say, oh, I've heard of it, but I don't know what it is. IT or not, you need to know as a manager, as an MBA grad, as a finance student, what SQL is, all right? Can you get access to the steps for the files you taught us today in a similar video? It will be easy for us to practice. I'll share all the solutions with you. I'll share the file with you, the same file on which we worked, in which the answer is already there. So all the steps will be there. You will be able to see all the steps, and I can't record a video because I already have a course with the video. So I hope you understand. If I start giving out videos for free, then I won't then run a business. I'll have to run a charitable business, right? But I'll definitely share the practice files with you, which will not just have the problem, but it will also have the solution. Of course, it will require you more effort because you'll have to go through all the steps and see what I did. But I mean, that is the amount of effort in any case you will have to put, right? Anyway, just to show you how I do my work, like when I'm preparing a client project, let me show you a active project. So anything, I can show you anyone. Okay, so there's a company called, why does it say that I'm offline? I'm not offline. One second, just refresh my page a few times. It has some problem. There's a fintech company called Ziploan. Uh-huh. So there's a fintech company called Ziploan. It's a non-secured loan provider to small businesses. So I was doing a project for them. This is a couple of years back when they were starting. This is just how this was done on Visual Basic, but the architecture remains the same on Power Query also. Why I'm showing you this, to tell you that this is what I do when I'm working on a project. What do you think? I just open an Excel file and start writing codes and queries on it? Of course not. I first create the entire plan. I create the framework. I create the process. I understand what is it that I want to do. What is the expected output? How will I finally get the result that I want? Once you do this, then you will be able to go back and then do it on Excel, right? And see, this is something I do for every project. This is something I did for PwC. Wonderful project. Don't have time to talk about this in detail, but I created an add-in for them, which allowed them to take a screenshot of an image and it would automatically extract the data for them. And it would save the signature in a folder. So this is how I explained the entire process. This is what you do. These are the error controls and the different paths that I defined, like this. Right? So you can create a free account on Lucidchart. On a free account, you can create 3 of these process flows. And I think every MBA student should be working on this. Like I had interns from IIM Nagpur this year. I said, whatever you do, you will have to show it to me on a Lucidchart. Don't make a pivot table and send it to me in a Word document and a PowerPoint presentation. That's ridiculous. You don't explain a process on a Word document or a presentation. You explain it like a process, which is like this. All right. Yeah. I mean, there are lots of competitors. I like Lucidchart because I like it. I just have a personal preference for it. I'm sure there are lots of other. Lucidchart is the market leader, though, but I'm sure there are lots of others like this that you can Google and find out. Lucidchart is actually a competitor to MS Visio, which is Microsoft's diagramming tool, right? It is not a part of Microsoft Office. You have to download it separately. You have to pay for it separately. But basically, what you can do on a Visio, you can do on Lucidchart as well. Right? So this is how Visio works. Fundamentally the same as Lucidchart. Anyway, good. We spoke about all this. Let me quickly go back and so once again, I will be sharing all the solid examples with you, every single example that we have covered. So don't worry about that, all right? How to get data from the internet, how to unpivot, top analyst, actual versus target. I'll share all these files with you at the end of the day. Okay, how many of you have worked on VBA? Who hasn't? That's okay. I'm assuming that most of you have not worked on Visual Basic. Has anybody worked on VBA earlier? Just a quick show of hands. Anyone? So I'm assuming a lot of notes, but has anybody worked on VBA earlier? No? If you know .NET, it will help you, right? I'm not sure what MVC is. What is MVC, Maya? Application framework, web application framework. Yeah, so this would be a little different though, but if you worked on .NET, then definitely some similarities would be there, okay? Sure. So this is the background of Visual Basic, and surprisingly, I found the Wikipedia entry to be really, really good. In fact, it's not surprising. I think for a lot of things, I find the Wikipedia to be a good source for a quick scan of what we're doing, right? So let's just search for Visual Basic for application. Now, here's the thing. Do you see this, everyone? In 2008, 12 years back, VB6 was declared as legacy. So there is no more development that is happening on VB. But that doesn't mean that new methods are not getting added. What that means is that Flash, or let's say Power Query, only got added some years back, but you can still refresh Power Query using FlashFill. Waterfall chart got added a few years back, but you can still run waterfall charts on VB. So Microsoft has stopped support. If you notice, it is considered to be one of the worst languages. Now, see, these are the sort of words that a developer will tell you. Obviously, because Visual Basic is not meant for development today because there are so many other things that have taken over. JavaScript is there. For data science, you can use Python and things like that. But the fact of the matter is that VBA is still what Excel works on, and organizations around the world work on VBA. In fact, if you go to Upwork, I'm sure all of you know of Upwork. And if I type VBA developer, do you see this? Do you see the number of people who are still working on VBA? Why the hell do you think somebody will pay a person $75 an hour if you feel that it is not used or it is not needed, right? So, I mean, it's standard. Like, I personally charge anywhere from, in India, I charge anywhere from $30 to $60 per hour for a project, right? Globally, of course, the amount increases even more. Like, you will have people who are charging $100 an hour. And that just goes to show you how important VBA is, right? Because organizations still continue to work on it. Now, VBA is there on every application in Microsoft Office. It's there on PowerPoint, on Excel, on Word, on Outlook. But yes, it has been declared legacy in 2008, right? But VBA 7 is the last one that came. But do remember that if you go online and if you ask people, people will say it's bad. It doesn't matter whether it's bad or good. It's just important for you to know that as a finance professional, VBA is something you will have to learn very, very well. Power Query and all is great, but do remember every organization will not have Power Query. I work with billion-dollar companies who are still working on 2003 Office. DCM Shriram is one of my clients. It does 7,000 crores a year, and it uses 2003 Office or 2007 Office. Lots of companies in India and abroad have not upgraded themselves from a Office version viewpoint. So VBA will remain. We project that VBA will be there for the next 20 years, even if other things take over, right? So don't feel that, oh, you're learning it and in 2 years it will become obsolete. People have been telling me for 10 years, don't learn it, don't learn it. And I built my entire business around it. Last year, I was a 40 under 40, which was for my work in Visual Basic. So if that doesn't give you confidence of how much importance you need to give to VBA, then I don't really know what other, the people who were there on the list. I had somebody on the list who was an ex-Amazon Alexa head who's now running his own AI firm. And he was a 40 under 40. I was on the same list as this gentleman. And that just goes to show you, I was a 40 under 40 last year. And this was purely for my work done in Excel Visual Basic, right? And this was like, they were really, really good people here, okay? And most of this, if you look, it's in data science, artificial intelligence, natural language. And I mean, this is crazy. I mean, people said, really, you did work in VBA and macros and you got a listing for that. But that just goes to show you how important it is, all right? Excellent. Now that we have established that VBA is a part of Excel in every version. So 2003, 7, 10, 30, 16, 19, every version will have VBA on it. How do you access it? Let me just open a blank file. And let me also save it on the desktop. So a VBA file cannot be saved as a normal Excel file. You will have to change the extension not to XLSX but to XLSM, which means that it's a macro-enabled workbook. All right. So I'm going to save it. I'll just call this Kriya, and I'll save it on my desktop. When you save a file as a macro-enabled workbook, does anything change? Not at all. Everything that you can do on a regular Excel, you can do on a macro-enabled workbook as well. So you just get some additional functionalities, but everything else remains the same. How do you work with VBA? You first have to enable the developer tab. For example, to do this, you click on File Options and select Add-ins. Sorry, click on Customize Ribbon, and then you select the developer tab here. By default, it is disabled because Microsoft doesn't want a regular Excel user to fiddle around with this, but you have to enable this. When you enable it on Excel one time, it gets enabled on all your Excel files. So it's not on a workbook level, it's at a system level. But if you enable it on Excel, it does not get enabled on Word and PowerPoint. If you wanted to work on Word and PowerPoint, you will have to do that independently. When we get the developer tab, we have something called Visual Basic. This is like the IDE, so the integrated development environment, where you can write your code. Now, one difference between VBA and Power Query in terms of the interface is that when you have VBA open, you can toggle between Excel and VBA, and you can work on both of them parallelly, which, remember, is not possible on Power Query. What do we have? On the left side, I can see this is the workbook name, Kriya. There is one sheet and there is one workbook, obviously. Now the workbook will only remain one, but I can add as many sheets as I want, right? But where do I write the code? The code will be written in something called a module. So I right click, insert a module. So let us write a simple code. I want to write a code which will allow me to write numbers from 1 to 10 in A1 to A10, right? How do I do this? The first thing I want to do is I want to write a comment. To write a comment, you put a single apostrophe and then you say, this is a comment, and it becomes green in color. Like in Python, you will have to put a hash, right? In Power Query, you will have to put a slash. Different languages will have different notations. This is how you put a comment. What do we want? We want to write serial numbers. So for this, I'll have to create a subroutine. Again, quick hop over back to Google. A subroutine is a programming concept, which means it's a set of instructions which is designed to perform a frequently used operation. Obviously, if you are only doing it one time, then why would you want to write a subroutine? You want to write a VBA code because you want to do it multiple times, right? The other confusion a lot of people have is between VBA and macros. Now remember, macro is not an Excel terminology. Macro is just a computing term, which means when I say macro computing, a macro is nothing. It's just a rule or pattern that specifies how an input sequence should be mapped so that you can get an output sequence. That's all. So don't think that macro is something you do only on Excel VBA. Macro can be done on Python. Macro can be done on JavaScript. Macro can be done on TypeScript as well. Any language that you're working on, you can do macro in any language. So whenever somebody says it's a macro, do not assume that it's on Excel. Even though what happens is any non-IT guy will assume that a macro is but a VBA code. A macro is not a VBA code. A macro is a computing sequence which you can run on any language. Okay. But when we are running a macro on Excel, that is when we call it a VBA, which means Visual Basic for Application. So it's a macro that we are running on Excel. That is how you refer to it. So never tell anybody, I wrote a macro. You should tell them that I wrote a macro on Excel. If you say I wrote a macro, then you're not correct. Okay. So don't make that mistake. What do we want? We want to write a routine, which is a subroutine. We can write a subroutine with SUB, which is a sub. What is it called? I want to call it, let's say, a serial number. Right? So this is my code. My subroutine is serial number, and the code is ending at this line, which is end of subroutine. What do we want? We want the value 1, okay, to come in A1. Now, which cell is this? This is the first row and the first column. This is the second row and the first column, third row and first column. So if you notice, one by one, my column is the same, but my rows are shifting, right? So I will say for I is equal to 1 to 10. That means I want the row to become 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. But my column is only one column, so it is 1. What do I want for all the rows one by one? I want that cells. Now it says which row and which column. Which row do I want? I want I. And which column do I want? We want the first column. What value do we want? We want I. And then I want to go to next I. So what will happen? In the first line, the value of I will be assigned to a variable. The value of 1 will be assigned to a variable called I. So then I will go to 1, 1, which means A1, and then I will insert the number 1. Then I go to the next I, which means I assign the value of 2 to the variable I. Then I go to 2, 1, which is A2. Then I put the value 2. Let's see how we get the result. So when I go back, how do I run the code? We click on developer and macros. There is a subroutine called serial number. When I click on run, we will get a series of numbers from 1 to 10. And this is how you can automate tasks on Excel. Like if somebody told you, can you write a list of numbers? What would you do? You would say, okay, let me put in 1 and 2. Let me select both of them and then drag it down like this. But this is manual, isn't it? Even if you wrote a formula, you would have written 1 plus 1, and then you will have to drag this down. But if you don't want to do any manual work, then you will have to write a code like this. No, indentation has no logic in VBA, everyone. So this indent that I've kept, the white space has no relevance. I can keep more, I can keep less. It has no relevance, okay? Also in VBA, the end of line does not have a character. So you don't have to close every line with a comma or a semicolon or anything like that, right? So VBA is a very old language, right? So it doesn't have these things. No, subroutine is not a function. A function will be a function. I'll give you an example of a function as well. Let's do one more example. Last year, this year. This is 2018, this is 2019, or actually 2019, we can do this. And then I have some numbers. Can anybody tell me, how do you find the growth? How do you find the growth year over year? So we say equal to D divided by C minus 1, right? What does that tell you? It tells you there has been a 2% growth, 7% growth, 32% growth, 26% degrowth. Fair enough? Or we could have written, for a simpler function, we could have written equal to current year minus base year divided by base year. Now, everybody knows this. There's no question about this. But does Excel have a function called growth? Now, Excel does have a function called growth, but that does something else. So if you notice, when I write growth, the growth is meant for some statistical formula. We don't want to use this one. I just want to say a simple function which will tell me last year, this year comparison. Make sense? I want to create a function of my own that Excel doesn't have. How do we do this? This time I'll create a function. So I say function, and let's call this change, right? Now watch. Unlike a subroutine, my function will accept arguments, obviously, because every function that you write, if I write VLOOKUP, there are parameters or arguments in it, right? So I need to declare some arguments. So my first argument is last year as integer, and then I'm selecting current year as integer. What will be my result? Change is equal to current year minus last year divided by last year. Now this function that I've written has become inbuilt in Excel. This means I can access change not as a macro, but as a user-defined function, because it's a function now. So what do I write now? I will select equal to change, select my last year, comma, select my current year, and it will give me the same result. Very cool, right? So imagine you don't have to write a formula anymore. You can just write a function like this, which is so much better, because this, of course, was a simple example. But imagine your problem was more complicated. The formula was very long, but it is a formula that you use over and over and over and over again. Why do you want to write that formula every single time? If it's a generic formula that you have written that you want to reuse over and over again, just create a function so that that function can be used wherever you want to, like this. Any questions on this? If you write a function name that already exists in Excel, I think there would be a clash and it would override that function. You can write a function available across all workbooks by writing a function in something called a personal macro workbook. I will not be covering this, but you can Google this, right? It's called a personal macro workbook, which allows you to keep a location in which whenever you put a code, that code will work across all your Excel workbooks. As a developer, we consider it to be very bad practice, because if you allow the function to work across all your workbooks, what will happen is, if anything goes wrong, hell will break loose across all your Excel workbooks. It is never considered a good habit to allow a macro or a function to access every file on your computer, right? But if you want to, you can Google it, personal macro workbook. Can you write a function that already exists in Excel? I think it will overwrite it, but let me check. UDF name already present. I'm not sure. I haven't tried it. It's a good question. Um, I have a feeling that it will override the existing function because if you record a macro with a shortcut, let's say Control C, what will happen? Your Control C will stop working. That means if you say that my macros shortcut is Control C, then your Control C will not copy anything anymore. So it's considered to be very dangerous. So whenever you assign a name or a shortcut, we always make sure to never use something which is already there on Excel. Because see, you're working as a developer, which means that you can override system settings. It's almost like a registry setting. Okay. So you should never ever tamper with this thing if you're not sure of what you're doing. Excellent question. I don't have the answer to that. If I had to pick an answer, I would say that it would override the existing function, but I don't want to take a risk right now. If you mail the file to somebody, will the function work on their system? Absolutely, why not? Because the function is a part of the Excel file, isn't it? Of course, the function will work on their system. And if they copy this into their Excel, it will start working on their Excel files as well. Right? I'm not saving the function on my system. I'm saving the function on a file, remember. Okay? So if I save the function on a file, then the file has the function in it. If the file goes to 15 other people, then everybody will have the function. Let's do another example. Okay. Great. So there is the answer. User-defined functions cannot override as the environment is different. I cannot validate that, but if you're confident, then great. I'll also have to check about that. All right. Now let's do an example. I want to create a table of content for all my sheets. So right now I have 10 sheets with me, and I want to create an index sheet which has a list of all the sheets in it. Now the problem here is, how do I do that? Kirti, you can use the function in other files, but you will have to copy those 3 lines of code to other files as well, right? If I want to create an index sheet with a list of all the sheet names with a hyperlink, it's very time consuming, isn't it? I'll have to make a list of all the names, then I'll have to right click, insert a hyperlink. Now, I don't want to write this code because the code is already there on the internet. Just like other programming languages, there are thousands and thousands of codes available. You just need to know where to find it and how to use it. So what do we want? We want to search for a VBA code that will create a table of content. So I will write VBA code 2. These are the 3 words that you have to write to do what? To create a table of content, right? There's a website. I'll click on it. The code will be a little long, but let's not worry about that because we just have to copy and paste it. So this is the code. Like I said, it's a long code, but don't worry. We can just copy the entire thing. Control C. I hope I have the right code. Yeah. Where do I paste it? I can come back to VBA. I'll just paste it below this. This is the entire code. What does it do? Let's see. Developer, macros, table of content create, run, and in one click, fantastic, right? It creates a list of all the sheets along with a hyperlink to every sheet. And this will work even if you have like a really, really large number of sheets with you. So let's say you have about 100 sheets with you. Imagine if you had to do this manually, it would have been very painful, right? To create a list of all the sheet names and then you have to go and put a hyperlink on every single sheet. And I've seen a lot of people who still do this. What is the solution? Macros, table of content, create, click on run, press yes, and in one click, you get a list of all the sheets along with a hyperlink. Macro is not it's a line by line execution. Okay, so please understand that a macro is not creating multiple values or performing multiple tasks at the same time. It cannot put 7 values at the same time and put 7 hyperlinks at the same time. It can only do it one by one. It just does it so fast that it seems that it's happening instantaneously, even though a macro is doing it as a line by line execution. Anything basis what we have done so far? All okay? Great. Then let's do a form control if all of you are comfortable with this. So remember we wrote a code that allowed us to write serial numbers from 1 to 10. But here's my problem. What if I want the person to choose the last number? I mean, rather than putting it in the code, which means that the user can't change it, I want the user to decide what should be the first, what should be the stop number. So this time I'll take a user input. So I'll say take user input. And what is this? This is a input box. And in the input box, I'll tell the user, choose your stop num like this. And the value that the user is writing in that input box, I'm saving it as last num. And then what will become my last number? It will not be 10 because it's dynamic now. It will be last num. So what is happening? The process is that the user chooses a number. I'm saving that number in a variable called last num. And then the last num becomes the stop number. Let's see how it works. When you run the macro, it will say choose your stop number. I say 5. And it creates 5 numbers for me. If I run it again and I say no, this time I want to write 7, then it will create 7 for me. Right? So it's a much better user experience, isn't it? Okay, right? Let's do something a little broader in scope now. I have some numbers between 100 and 500. And I want to highlight, let's say this is 2013, 14, 15, and 16. And here it is Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. What do I want? I want to highlight the top 3 numbers. Anyone? How do you highlight the top 3 numbers? How would you do it? Not using VBA on Excel if you had to do it. Absolutely, conditional formatting. But there's a problem. The problem is I will select, I'll go to conditional formatting. I will say top 10, and I will change it to 3. So if you notice, I can change the number to 3 and I can make the color as green, which is working perfectly. You will say, Havish, why do we need a VBA code when conditional formatting can do this? I agree with you. The problem is that what if suddenly the client says, oh, can you show me the bottom 3? Now you have to undo this. This means you will have to first go to clear rules and then clear the rule. Then you will have to come back, apply bottom 10, say, oh, this is 3, and then press OK. Suddenly the client will say, no, I don't want to see the bottom 3, I want to see the bottom 7. Now you have to change it. You will have to go to conditional formatting, manage rules. You will go to the rule, edit, and you will say, okay, this is not the bottom 3, it is the bottom 7. Do you see how the user experience is not very nice? The conditional formatting option is brilliant. There's nothing wrong with that. But when you're sitting in front of a client and the client will have 100 questions for you, he will keep on throwing questions at you one by one. But it's so difficult for us to every time remove the old format, put the new format, remove the old format, put the new format. So I want to make this experience a lot better. Let's see how we do this. Okay. The first thing that I will want to do is, please watch, is to click on developer and record my macro. This means that every action that I'm performing on my system, whether it is adding a column, writing a value in A1, changing it to bold, writing a sum formula, making a pivot table, whatever it is that I do, that action, that command will be recorded by VBA automatically. Okay. So I click on record macro. The name is macro1. I'm okay with that. I'm not changing anything else. And I press OK. Now see what happens. This button at the top left will change to stop recording. So this is an indicator that right now, everything that I do on my system is being recorded. Just have some water. So what do? I will select all my cells. Please watch everyone. Home, conditional formatting, top, bottom, top 10. I'm making it 10. We can change it later. I'll change the color to green and I'll press OK. Then again click on conditional formatting, top, bottom. Then I select bottom 10 and then I say, let's say bottom 2 and I change it to red. Finally, I also want to record the code for clearing the rule, right? Now we have done 3 things. I put the top, I put the bottom, and I have removed all the formats. Fair enough? So on developer, we can stop the recording and let's see what has been recorded right now. So what we have is something like this. Now I know it seems like quite a lot, which it is, but let's break it down and see what all we want. The first thing we did was we selected C3, F6, then we added top 10. So do you see this part? This is nothing but adding of top 10. What is this part? This part is adding of bottom 10. I know it says top 10, but this is actually the bottom 10. And then finally, what is the last step? This is, do you see this last line, everybody? This last line is selection.format condition.delete. That means this is the line that will delete any existing format. Now, how will my code start? I want the code to run in a user form. So a user form looks like this. So this is how you can create user forms on Excel, okay, on VBA. So I want to create a user form. So just like we inserted a module, this time I want to insert. So right click and insert and a user form. Let's also improve the aesthetic appeal. So the name I'm going to call as the caption, and the caption can be choose top or bottom values. I'll change the color as well. So let's change the background color to blue. And in this, I want to give a few controls to the user. Now the user has to decide the direction and the number. So I'll create, there's a toolbox here, okay? So I want to create a text box, which is like this. I will create another text box which is like this, and I will also create a label. So I'll create a label on the left. Now the label color should be changed to white, otherwise we will not be able to see it. So I change it to white, and we can just copy and paste it. So we get one more label like this. What should the first label be called? So in the caption, we can say choose, so that the user can choose top or bottom. And in the second one, we are writing the number, so the user can choose the number. We also need a submit button, so the user can click somewhere. So we can insert a command button like this. And we will call this submit. S-U-B-M-I-T. Let's reduce the size a little bit. And I think this looks great. But now that code has to come inside the user form. So I'll go back to my module. I will just cut the entire code, go to my user form and double click on submit. Watch carefully. I'm double clicking on submit, which means that this is an event. When will the event occur? When the user is clicking on the command button. Okay. And what should be the first thing that happens? Anyone? What should be the first part of the code that happens when a user clicks on the command button? What should be the first thing that it does?
It will store the above values on the variables.
No. What is the first thing that it does? Think. It will ask for the user input. Sure, I'm taking the user input. What should be the first thing? Absolutely. So the user chooses the top and bottom and the number. What after that? Once the user has chosen either top or bottom and the user has chosen the number, what should be the thing that happens immediately after that? It should what? Should it just apply it? Once the user has chosen top 5, should it just apply it? No. Why not? Because what if there was already a conditional formatting applied there? Which means that the first thing that should happen is to remove any existing format. This is how everybody, a product manager works. This is how you have to create a process to look at the user interaction. We are a developer. We will create it in a way which makes sense to us. We will say, why will there already be a format? We are creating a format for the first time. But the end user doesn't know that. So that is why in a process, you always have a user testing, okay? What we call UAT, which is user acceptance testing, okay? Which means what? You have created something taking into account a user journey. Where will a user click? How will he interact with the form? But how do you know how the user will work? You're only reading your own mind, right? So it is very important to think like a user, which means the first thing I want to do is to remove any existing format. How do we do that? We will select the cells and I will copy that last line of code, which is this one, and I'll paste it here. I hope this makes sense. The very first thing before anything happens is it should select the C3 to F6 range and it should remove any format. Then I have to check if user chose top or bottom, right? How do I check that? I will say that I have two text boxes here. I'll call the first text box as txt underscore choose, and the next one can become txt underscore number. All right. So what do I want? I want to say that if the txt value in choose is equal to top, then something should happen. Otherwise, something else should happen, and then an end if. So this is the syntax. You have to write if, you have to write then, you have to write else, and you have to write end if. Remember, if you put the then on the other line, it will not work. There is a specific syntax that you have to follow, which is like this. if and then have to be on the same line. All right. Else if isn't there. Okay, so we don't have an else if like this. If you say else if like this, that also doesn't work. Right? Okay, so I say if the user has chosen top, then what should happen? Then this entire part should be cut and put here. Otherwise, this is the part that should work, which means if the user has chosen top, then it should select the top 10. If you notice this part, it says Excel top 10 top. If the user chooses bottom, it should be Excel top 10 bottom. But the number should not be 10. The number should come from the other text box. So rather than writing 10 here, I can say text underscore number dot value, which means I'm actually choosing the value that the user has chosen in the user form, like this. So I'll copy the same thing here as well. Here I said 2, and that's it. We get our code. Let's see how it works. But my question is, how will the form open on the Excel file? Like if I come on Excel, how do I even see the form? Like if I go to macros, I don't have a macro which has been created for opening the form, right? So I will need to create a macro whose only sole purpose is to open the user form, which means my user form is called what? It is called user form 1. If you see the name here, I will go to my module and I'll create a simple line. I'll say sub open my form, which is what? User form 1 dot show. This is how you open a user form. So this is the subroutine that we have written, open my form. Now when we click on macros and we open the form, open my form, the form will open. I can choose top and 5 and it selects the top 5. If I say top 10, it selects the top 10. Suddenly I say, no, show me the bottom 5. It will show me the bottom 5 like this. Okay. Any questions? And you see how much faster this approach is. Once you get used to using user forms, you will never feel like going back to normal Excel. It's so irritating, isn't it? You have to go to conditional formatting, remove the old format, make a change, edit it. You don't have to do any of that. Everything is available on a form. As in when you need it, you can open up the form. Even better, I can make a shape, right? Like this. Nothing special, just a shape. And I can right click and say assign macro. So the shape will act like a trigger, which means I can assign a macro, which is my open my form. So whenever I want to open the form, I don't even have to go to the developer tab. I can just click on this button and the form will open. Right, like this. Any questions? Is it possible to have a drop down? Yeah, absolutely. I haven't put it. You can have a drop down value as well. So there is a drop down here. You have a list box and you have a combo box, right? So you can use the combo box and the combo box can have the values. I'm not doing that, but I mean, it's the same thing. You can trigger on file open. Yeah, you can trigger on file open. So I can say that, let me show you. So I have my workbook, everybody, this one. I will say that when the workbook is opening, then something should happen. What should happen? I want to run a code. What code? I want to call the, I'm sorry, what was the code? Open my form, is it? 1 second. Just open my form. Why is it not coming? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I put it on a wrong Excel file. No problem. I'll put it on the correct. I actually put it on the notes file. This is the workbook we are working on. So if you notice, I went on this workbook and I'm saying that the event is when the workbook is opening. So the moment a user opens the workbook, the event will be executed and the form will be opened. So we usually run a code from another module by using call. Even if you write it without call, it works. But I always recommend that you should write call. Otherwise, you will not know what you just did. Once we have done this, I can close it. And the next time we open it, it will automatically open the form for you. Right? Good. What else? And if you feel that VBA forms are limited in scope, of course they are. It doesn't have HTML and CSS. You can't do a lot of beautification on it. But don't think that it can't be made pretty. Just to give you an example, look at a form that I've created for one of my clients. I'll answer your question. Okay, let me hide this. So do you see this, everybody? I have these slices, which obviously you know is a pivot table. This is my master Excel for a company with all employees and all their details. And how does the form work? I just select a name, I click on view form, and this entire form opens up. In fact, I have a form within a form, so I have two forms like this. So if you really have the time and the patience, and if you have the need, you can create forms like this as well. Do remember that you're limited by VBA objects, so you can't do HTML and CSS. I mean, you can't do CSS, so which is very limiting in scope because if you don't have all those elements with you, your forms will look very boring. You can't make a lot of changes to it. It will just be boxes and some colors and stuff like that. Kirti, I'll ask you a question. So you can put all your questions just put on a piece of paper. I'll come back and answer. Let's take a short 10-minute break. It's 3:38. We will start at 3:50 and the session is scheduled till 4 o'clock, but we can stretch it a little bit in case you have any questions. And of course, tomorrow we'll have a separate session. We can do that, right, Asha?
Yes, sir.
Great. So 3:50 we will resume. All right. I'm not closing the window. I'm just pausing the session. So make sure not to close it. Keep it open on your system. You can come back and resume. Asha, does anybody have any questions?
I guess no, sir. Maybe we can wait for another 3 minutes.
Sure.
Yes, I have a question.
Can you add user form somewhere else? Where else do you want to add it? Arun, where do you want to add a user form?
I went to ask, can we get it from somewhere else rather than creating your own? And
where else will you get it from?
Compatibility issues.
You can't get it from anywhere else. It's an Excel user form. A user form that you create on any other language has no compatibility with Excel.
No, or you can just get the code.
If somebody has created a user form on his system on Excel and he sends the code to you, you can just copy the code. You can get your own user form. Pre-made, right? Yeah. So for example, I created the user form. I put in all the effort. Wait. I made the user form. Now imagine you have to create the same user form once again. Obviously, you don't want to do that. Why would you replicate the same thing? So you can, this is my user form. Please watch. and this is your other workbook. You can just select it, drag it, put it on the other workbook, and it gets copied. That's all you have to do. 1 second. Like this, the user form gets copied. As simple as that. Or if you want to do it the longer way, you can right click, export it as a basic file. It exports as a BAS, as a FRM file. And then the form, you can send it to somebody. He can import the form on their system. Is that okay? All right. Can we not use data filter instead of a filter formula? What does that mean, Ayushi? Going to the data option using filter. Of course you can, but then that's manual, isn't it? Every time you will have to go to the filter and change the numbers manually. For example, if I have, 1 second. Let's say I have these dates with me, okay? And I also have some corresponding numbers with me. And I'm asking you, can you tell me how many of these dates have a value of between 100 and 200? How will you do it? You will have to select it. You will have to go to data. You will apply a filter. Then you will have to click on the drop down. You will have to go to number filter. Then you will say between. Then you will select 100. Then you will write, let's say 200, or let's say 150, and then you will press OK. Then what do you do with this data? You will have to copy it. You will have to put it somewhere else. Then you will have to come back here and remove the filter. Do you really want to go through all this hassle for every small thing? Absolutely not. It is much simpler to simply say, I want to filter my entire data like this. What is the filter that I want to apply? I want my values to be, which means all the values should be greater than 100 and all the values should be less than 150. This is much simpler, right? Because it's a formula. So this, what happened? Okay, I don't know what's going on. 1 second. Date 5 to date 24 is greater than 100 and it is less than 150. Okay, why is it not coming correctly? Nevertheless, right, you get the idea, right? So the idea of using a filter is that you don't have to manually every time go and operate on the file. You can control it externally. For the life of me, I don't know why this is not working. Oh, I did not put a multiplication. So sorry. So we need to have a multiplication. That's why it should not work in a hurry, right? Like this. Yeah, so we have to multiply. Will the macro that you create for formatting work on table of any dimension? No, Kirti. It will not work on table of any dimension. Yes, it will work on table of any dimension. Whatever data you select, it will work on that data set. In my example, what I had done was, I had defined only C3 to F6, but you don't select C3 to F6. You let the user decide what they want to select. In my case, because the data was fixed, that's why I chose it. You just let the user decide whatever they want to select, right? Basically, whatever the user has selected, the format will be applied only on that region. Right? What else? And if you're learning Excel, please learn Power BI parallelly, especially for finance. Power BI is going to become of paramount importance, right? I started working on Power BI only because EY told me I have to take a training on Power BI. And now I think for every 7 trainings we do on Excel, we do 3 trainings on Power BI in the span of a year and a half. That just goes to show you how much importance they're giving on Power BI. So right now, not a lot of companies are working on it. Big Fours are at the forefront and they use technology much better than the others. But slowly, other companies have also started to become aware of Power BI. And the usage will only increase with time. So make sure to work on Power BI as well if you haven't done so already. Because the sort of visualizations that you can create on Power BI is something you can't even imagine on Excel. Just to give you an example, this is my website, and I want to show you some examples I've created on Power BI. And I'll show you a finance example. It's taking a little bit of time to load. This is marketing. So this is marketing in HR, but look at this one. Right? These sort of dynamic visuals to see change over time. If you want to see, I'll give you an example. Let's say the decomposition tree, which is this one. You can't do stuff like this. Like this is a much better table. So rather than making a table, you can show this dynamic visual that allows you to do a root cause analysis. So you can have different items and it can go item by item. Can you imagine doing something like this on Excel? And you can even have different slices and select all this. And I mean, there are over 300 different visuals available in Power BI. You'll go bonkers even attempting to make every one of them. There are so many that by the time you learn a few, they end up making even more of them. Like for the example, this drill down donut chart, I can actually click on the pie to go one level within the pie. Like this is USA. These are the different types of businesses in USA. In small business, I can see the different products within small business, right? And lots of other things. There's sort of calculations that you can do, or the sort of tables that you can create, heat maps that you can create. It will be 100 times more powerful. So in terms of visualization, like this is called the MECO chart, right? Very useful. MECO chart is a stacked column chart, but if you notice the width of all the columns is also different. So it's beautiful. If you notice, USA has a higher width, Mexico has a lesser width. That means that you're presenting 3 values. You're showing the stacks, so you're showing the different discount band, the profit, and the sales, and the country at the same time. How cool is that, right? And some other different types of visuals are available, right? Like this is called the Sankey. This is again not available on Excel, and it can't work on Excel. You can't get dynamic charts. Even from a visual appeal, how you can present it on Power BI, even simple charts like this, you can't do such stuff on Excel. Again, not to say that Excel is not important. Like here, the tree map, if you remember, I told you on tree map on Excel can only have 2 levels, but here you can have as many levels as you want. Like right now, I'm looking at region, segment, shipping mode, and the country. So we have 4 levels with us, right? This level of depth is not possible on Excel. Excel is like for babies, you know, for you to get a teaser of what all is possible. But if you really want to do it properly, then you need to have Power BI with you. Like I can see my years, I can see my quarter. If I want to drill down within a year, I can select the year and it goes within that year like this. So very cool stuff. Then you can have these scrollers, gauge charts, tornado. I mean, somewhat gauge and tornado, we can make it on Excel, but it will not be possible to get the same appeal. Right? I mean, you can just Google it. It's on my website. I mean, there are so many examples. I'm sure you will like them a lot. Like these are how I present KPIs, right? This is how properly KPIs are supposed to be presented. Not the way Excel does it. Excel, I mean, there are a lot of limitations. Like here, if you're showing target versus sales, I can see a line chart. I can see a pin chart like this. Okay? So the different ways we can see all this. Right? So Power BI is a natural evolution. If you're working in finance, then you have to learn Power BI. There's no So level of granularity is there on every tool. It's not Tableau or Power BI. Qlik will have it, ThoughtSpot will have it, IBM Cognos will have it, SAP BI will have it. The advantage is that Power BI is much simpler to learn. Power BI data cleaning is much more powerful because Tableau has a different tool called Tableau Prep that does data cleaning. But Power BI has mQuery, which is 100 times more powerful than Tableau. Tableau is ramping up very quickly, but at the moment, Power BI is much more powerful. Plus, on Power BI, you have over 300 visuals available. On Tableau, whenever you have to create a visual, you have to create it manually. You have to create some calculations. You need to know mathematics very well. In Power BI, all these are inbuilt visuals. So you can just click on a button and you can create it, right? For example, creating something like this on Power BI, a Sankey on Power BI is a one click. To create a Sankey on Tableau will make you go mad. If you try to create a Sankey on Tableau, something like this, just see the number of steps that it takes. You will have to create exponential functions. You will have to create all these calculations. Do you see all this? You really feel a normal user will put in this effort to make curve functions and all sigmoid. Who will even know all of these things, right? And that's the benefit of Power BI. In Power BI, if you want to create a Sankey, there's just one click, you get it. In Tableau, it will require you to learn a lot of things. And Tableau doesn't work on DAX. Tableau works on MDX, which is multi-dimensional expressions. Very similar to DAX, but the calculation engine is very different. Power BI is free, so you can download Power BI Desktop free of cost. They don't charge you any money for Power BI Desktop. You can create a visual, you can send the file to other people, you can create multiple files. All the visuals are available, all the formulas are available. The only limitation is that if you want to share a file with somebody over the cloud, not as a file, a local file, for that you need a Power BI Pro account, which will cost you 770 rupees per month. But you don't need this. Like everything that you want, you can do on Power BI Desktop. And that is a very big advantage that Power BI has over Tableau. Because in Tableau Public, you can't share your files with others. In Power BI Desktop, you can share your files with others, even on the free version. But yes, the paid one will be a subscription like 365, which is $10 per month. And if you want an organization subscription, that starts at $5,000 per month. So you're looking at spending about 40 lakhs per year. But that is for like 1,000 people. See, you can defend Tableau to the world's end, but the truth is, a normal user, my client, I work with CFOs, my client, I can't tell my client, oh, there is an extension available, I'll give the extension the link. It doesn't work like that. What if I want to do something else on Tableau? I'm not dismissing it. See, I am a Tableau owner, okay? I have, where the hell is my Tableau gone? What just happened? 1 second. Okay, I don't know what just happened, but anyway, I must have uninstalled it or something. That's the strangest thing. 1 second, everyone. Anyway, I have a professional edition. I spent 60,000 rupees for it. I do work on it. I'm just telling you what my client. Okay, for the life of me, I don't know where it has disappeared to. But anyway, the idea here is that, see, they're all competitors. I'm not telling you what to use, what not to use. You ask me, where is Power BI better? I'm telling you where Power BI is better. You tell me how many companies are using Qlik and how many companies are using Power BI. If Qlik is so much better, then in the Gartner Magic Quadrant for BI, why is Microsoft Power BI here and why is Qlik here? I mean, it's just a numbers game, no? In terms of how rapidly they are getting new clients, Qlik is far behind. Tableau is obviously doing very well because it's very large, but Tableau has lost market share. From 2018 to 2019, they've lost 10% market share. And that tells you something. It is still the #1 BI tool in the market, but it's losing market share. So it will be interesting to see what happens in the future. It's unlikely that one tool will rule. There will be multiple tools. Unlike Excel, which has no competition, in BI you'll have many, many tools. Like ThoughtSpot is doing very well. IBM wants to make a comeback with Cognos, so maybe that will pick up. Google has its own data studio now. Google has purchased a company called Looker. Amazon for many years has been saying that they want to enter into business intelligence. So we don't know. SaaS is again picking up very well. Most of the Fortune 500 companies work on SaaS. So I'm not dismissing anybody. I'm just saying that Power BI will emerge as one of the leaders, if not the only leader, for a very simple reason, because it's Microsoft. The sort of money they have, the sort of integration they have with a full stack with Microsoft Azure, Outlook, SharePoint, Microsoft Dynamics CRM, it will not be possible for any external tool to do that. I'm only a messenger. I'm telling you what I see in the market. Power BI. For beginners, Tableau is going to be extremely difficult. In Tableau, there are no rows and columns. There are dimensions and measures. So even the simplest of things that you want to do becomes that much more complicated. I have an entire free course available on YouTube. There's a 1-hour course on Power BI. There's a 45-minute, 50-minute course on Tableau. You can have a look at that, and that will show you how they work. Good. Anything else? Also, I need to know why my Tableau has disappeared, so I have to download it again. I'll do it later. Great. What else can I answer for you? Anyway, we have a session tomorrow as well. So you can, if you have any questions, you can just spend the night, sleep on it, think about it, and you can always ask me tomorrow as well. Okay, so 12 o'clock, we have a session, and we can discuss it. You're most welcome, Aman. Thank you, everybody. I know it was a packed 2 days. We covered a lot of ground. It is a lot. It will take you time to absorb all of this and take your time to get comfortable with all of it, but just do it a little bit at a time. You will be working on Excel for the rest of your life, for good or bad. So don't do it in a hurry. Learn it once, but learn it well. Don't learn it in a hurry, because a lot of people think, oh, let's learn the basics and then maybe at a later point in life we learn the advanced topics. Don't do that. Take your time. It doesn't matter if you spend a month just working on Excel without Power Query and Power Pivot and all of that. But learn it well, so that if somebody asks you questions on offset and indirect and all, fundamentally you should be very clear. Power Query and DAX will take you years to learn, right? Plus those languages are evolving, which means that more and more functions and capabilities get added every month, sometimes multiple times a month. So it's a moving target. It's not that you can just learn everything. So in any case, you will have to keep on reading, keep on checking what announcements Microsoft is making, how AI and ML is being introduced in Excel, right? The Power BI YouTube video link is just on my channel. If you want, I can share it again. So see, there's a different playlist that is there, so you can watch this. I also have a 5-hour course on Power BI and a 3-hour course on Tableau. That, of course, is an advanced course. It covers all these topics. I'll coordinate with Asha and I can discuss that. Source to practice VBA code step by step. No, it's not possible to practice VBA step by step because it's a programming language, right? So there is just so much in VBA that it is not possible to have step by step written anywhere. It's just not possible. If you want to learn it properly, then you can purchase this book from Amazon. It's called VBA Power Programming. I also have a couple of books, but I wouldn't recommend that for your purpose. VBA Power Programming, and it is available on Amazon. So Michael Alexander has written it, and I don't think it's very costly. That's strange. It used to be 700 rupees. You can see if there is some cheaper version available somewhere else, but this is the book that you want. Or if you search on Google, you will find a PDF. I mean, I'm not telling you to break the law, but if you search hard enough, you will find it. But this is the book that you want if you want to learn it properly. And this is how I learned VBS. So most welcome. Anything else? Excellent. I think we can call it a day. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and I will see you tomorrow at 12 o'clock. You can connect with me even after tomorrow. I'm always available for students. I'm always available for other people who want work from me. I only work for specific durations. For the students, I'm always there. You can call me up 24/7 at any point of time for any queries, personal or professional. I'm more than happy. I'd be delighted to have that contribution and put you in the right direction. So tomorrow you can ask me the questions that you have. And in any case, even if you think of something later, my number, email ID, add me on LinkedIn, any mode, Pranshu. If you want to call me, for students, I always say call me from 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. That is when I'm a little free. During the day, I'm always busy with one thing or the other. The best way is to drop me an email with your problem before you call me, so that I know what you want to talk about. Otherwise, what will happen is you'll call, there'll be some pleasantries, we'll spend 15 minutes and we will not even know what we're discussing. So if you send me an email saying that this is what it is that I want to solve, this is the problem I have, this is the file I'm working on, then we can connect and I'll make sure I see the file before you call me and we can discuss that. Right? So I'll share my, Arsha, you can just share my details with everybody. So you can contact me however you want.
Sure, sir.
Excellent. So I have another session at 5 o'clock. It's a board meeting, so I have to plan for that. So thank you once again, everybody. I'll see you tomorrow at 12 noon. All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.